When you log into Pokemon TCG Live for the first time, you're given 8 free decks. I know a lot of people were expecting cheap theme decks or something, but the developers went above and beyond. Not only are the decks centered around great cards, but you also receive a ton of staple trainer cards and support Pokemon to help boost your collection from day one. Now, ranking these free decks isn't as easy as you might think, so I decided to rank them more in a bubble. Because if you take any of them online against a full-fledged Mew VMAX deck, you'll likely get obliterated. I'll have a video up soon on how to improve these decks to make them more competitive, but for now, I'm basing my decisions on what you get right away with no improvements whatsoever. Decidueye and Inteleon is simultaneously the best and worst deck of the bunch. The whole gimmick with Decidueye is the Deep Forest Camo ability, which makes you immune to damage from Pokemon V, VMAX, and V-Star. Mew VMAX can easily beat you, and Shadow Rider Calyrex V also presents problems, but for other decks out there, if they only play attacking V Pokemon or only one non-V Pokemon, you have a very good chance of winning. However, if you're facing off against a fellow single prize deck like Malamar, Decidueye's attack is just too weak to keep pace. That's why it's the best and worst at the same time. Also, there isn't a single recovery card, so you'll never be able to get a lost Pokemon back. A and C tier. Malamar is another free single prize deck, but it requires a lot of prep and thinking. The only attacking Pokemon in the entire deck is Malamar, which does 40 damage times the number of Rapid Strike cards you shuffle from your hand into your deck. There's always a chance you can store a one-hit KO on a VMAX with Malamar, but odds are you'll be two-shotting things. As good as Malamar can be, just know that you're going to have a very hard time against spread decks because all of your Pokemon are so weak. Additionally, you have to rely heavily on Ordinary Rod to recycle Pokemon, and you can only use one Octillery ability per turn, regardless of how many Octillery are in play, so a 4-4 line seems a bit much. B tier. Every free VMAX deck suffers from the same issue. There's only a 2-2 line of each of them. If you prize one or both of your basic Pokemon V, it's going to be extremely difficult to win. Suicune V, however, is the best of both worlds. You play 2 Suicune V as well as a 1-1 Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. Ordinary Rod means you can recycle a Suicune V easily, and Melanie means you can easily power up a fresh one on the same turn. Altaria is a weird inclusion, but it can stack a supporter on top of your deck. The Ludicolo line is way too thick, but it does boost Suicune's damage by 100 the turn you evolve into it, opening the door to do some big damage when you need it most. A tier. Blissey V is a deck that requires a lot of things to go right, but if they do, you can really frustrate your opponent. What makes Blissey V special is the fact that it has 300 hit points after attaching a Cape of Toughness. Then, with Hyper Potion, Lucky Ice Pop, and Suspicious Food Tin, you can almost heal off every point of damage turn after turn. And while some of those healing cards require you to discard energy, Blissey's Blissful Blast attaches 3 energy from the discard pile. Blissey V is great against decks that can't deal 300 damage, and Path to the Peak shuts off your opponent's V abilities like Crobat and Genesect V. However, it gets off to a very slow start, awkward hands can cause you to lose games almost immediately, and any deck that can deal 300 damage will just kinda run right through you, like Taco Bell. B tier. Now, while those free VMAX decks can struggle if you prize a V, if everyone shows up for work, every single one of those decks is good in their own way. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, for example, is very close to its competitive counterpart. Only having a 2-2 Urshifu line sucks, but you do have a full Inteleon line to increase your chances of getting everything you need right away, an Octillery to get your Rapid Strike energy, and Raihan to fully power up an Urshifu in one turn. A tier. This Shadow Rider deck relies entirely upon getting 2 Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX into play as quickly as possible. If you prize any one of those 4 cards, the deck doesn't function as intended. But if you are able to get 2 Shadow Rider VMAX up and running on turn 2, and maximize your Galarian Articuno, which attaches 2 energy from your hand when you bench it, the deck can do a lot of damage really quick, while also drawing 2 cards every time you use the Underworld Door ability. The 4 Cresselia is massively unnecessary though. B tier. If I had to choose the worst VMAX deck, it would probably be Inteleon VMAX. There's just too many moving parts. You have to get a Frostmoth into play, you have to have an Inteleon on your bench, and you have to be able to retreat your active to allow that Inteleon to attack. But even this deck still has its good points. Inteleon VMAX 2-shots most Pokemon out there, and it can deal up to 90 damage to a benched Pokemon V thanks to Telescopic Sight. You get it set up, it's good, you don't, it's bad. C tier. Zacian V and Zamazenta V together create a pretty good competitive deck in Standard right now. The free version shares some similarities, but the developers threw in a Berserker line or 2 and a Crobat V. Even so, you have 4 potential attackers with this deck. Zacian V can deal 230 damage, which has always been a great number, and Zamazenta V is immune to Pokemon VMAX. However, Path to the Peak shuts off Zamazenta V, so there are some issues. Additionally, they both have 3 energy attack costs. Metal Saucer definitely helps though, as does Intrepid Sword, which may attach energy to Zacian V, but 3 energy is still a bit much. Against the other free VMAX deck, Zacian Zamazenta is scary. Against the single prize decks or Decidueye, not so much. B tier. I didn't cover Single Strike Urshifu VMAX and Mew VMAX in the main video because they'll rotate out as Battle Pass rewards when Astral Radiance launches in May, but Urshifu functions really well. Having the Dark type Urshifu as your backup attacker means you can hit Mew and Shadow Rider for weakness, and it can also do 260 damage to everyone else if you power it up correctly. You have 4 Houndoom and 4 Urn and 4 Tower of Darkness to help draw and attach energy. Energy and drawing cards each turn will always be a concern, but if you accomplish that, it hits super hard. Just don't expect to do too well against single prizers. A tier. Mew, meanwhile, only has 1 Genesect V. The whole reason Mew VMAX is such a crazy deck is because you can draw a ton of cards every turn with Genesect. You can still pull off some crazy turn 1 plays thanks to Elisa Sparkle and Meloetta, but the lack of 4 Genesect just saps everything that makes Mew VMAX, meaning that finding your 1 copy of Elisa Sparkle on that turn 1 is nearly impossible. Maybe I'm being too harsh on this specific version, but I can't put it any higher than B tier. And that'll do it. So this is my unofficial, official ranking of the 10, quote-unquote 10 free decks you get in Pokemon TCG Live. I wish I came into this video and told you that so-and-so deck is trash and so-and-so deck is god tier. The reality is every single free deck is competitive in its own way, and that's pretty amazing if you ask me. So when you download TCG Live for the first time, don't be afraid to give them all a try. And if you disagree with my ranking, let everyone know in the comments below. I know it's not perfect and everyone can have a different experience, so if you disagree, let everyone know below.